What is up, guys? Welcome to another video, and today we're doing another Halo the Spartan Collection review, specifically Wave 5. And so this is going to be like in the same format as the Wave 4 review, where I'm just doing the entire wave. And funny enough, we're still doing 3 figures, even though waves consist of 4 figures. And the reason why is because I've already done a review on Combat Evolved Master Chief. I did that in the 20th anniversary 2-pack, so if you haven't seen that, go check that out after you watch this video. But with that said, I'm very happy that this video is being made now. This has been an anticipated video for me because I like reviewing the Spartan Collection figures, and you know, I review them the second they come out, so I don't really give myself time to, you know, enjoy these figures. I just do it. I do the reviews right then and there, and then I just wait. I don't do really anything in between. The 4-pack for the 3 3/4 inch wave is an exception because I won Combat Evolved the Grunt, but basically very happy that I'm getting this video out because I don't review these figures enough, and I like reviewing these figures. It's very fun. So with that all said, let's get into the review, starting off with Spartan Kelly. So looking at the packaging for Kelly and just the visuals, first impressions, all that, the figure is looking good. Really liking that reflective visor. If you don't know, I really love the reflective visors in this series, and just here's a better look of the figure and just the rest of the wave: Rouge, Jorge, Combat Evolved Chief. And with all that said, let's get Kelly out of the box. And just like my ex, despite looking really good, this figure has a lot of issues. And starting off with articulation, if you're asking why is Kelly ripped in half, I will tell you in just a moment. But starting off with head articulation, she can only look up and down and side to side. She can't tilt at any other angles, which makes me big sad because head articulation is a big thing for a figure, especially if you're someone who likes to take photos of toys or just put your figures in dynamic poses. Then getting to the arm articulation, which is probably some of the best articulation on this figure, she can rotate her arm 360 degrees at the swivel, ball joint, whatever you want to call it, because I don't know toy anatomy as well as some people do, but rotate her arm 360 degrees. Elbow articulation is She can bring the forearm up past the halfway point, which is pretty good, but overall I feel like she could have brought her arm up a little bit more. I don't know if that's me being picky or not. But then when we get to the hand is just solid Jazwares Spartan Collection articulation. Rotate 360 degrees and bend it however you want. Now getting to the torso, the part that kills me is there's no torso articulation. This figure cannot bend at the torso, at the waist, whatever you want to call it, no matter what. And to prove it, once you remove the stomach piece and put that ball joint in the socket, she can move her torso however she wants. It's that fucking stomach piece, and it kills me because you need that stomach piece there so your figure doesn't look weird, and it just makes me sad that, you know, this figure limits its own movement. Getting to the legs aren't as bad as I thought they were going to be. She can do a full split, which is always a good sign of leg articulation. And then she can do a butt kick, but she does that weird knee articulation thing, bend thing, where it just doesn't look right, and it makes me very sad because it just doesn't look organic. And then you can rotate the leg at the thigh, but it will come at the cost of the socket will get all confused and just not want to go back into place. So you have to be very careful with fixing that issue because you can break off a piece of the figure. So I fixed it, so my crisis has been averted. I don't know about yours. And then getting to the feet articulation is pretty solid. At first it felt really locked up, but eventually I was able to loosen it. But it's just standard Spartan Collection feet articulation. Rotate it pretty much however you want so the figure can stand in various poses. And then toe articulation, you know, just bend the toe up and down. They can't really mess that up. So yeah, overall articulation makes me want to cry myself to sleep. So with that issue out of the way, moving on to the accessories, starting off with the hands. You know, Spartan Collection figures, they always come with hands, so this is a given. Starting with, you know, 2 holding hands, 2 gun holding hands, and by that I mean they're holding hands with the trigger fingers out. And then we have the fists, and then we have 1 tactical call out hand. Just that's what I'm calling it until an actual name is given to it. But yeah, 6 hands, for your figure, so you can have them doing a variety of things. And I think this is one of the cooler things on Jazwares, and you don't really see any mass-produced toy lines do this kind of stuff with multiple hands. You usually see this in the more like expensive toy lines made for like adults and stuff, like 1,000 Toys and just brands like that. So very cool. Thank you, Jazwares. And for our first weapon included, we have the sidekick. We've seen the sidekick before in the Spartan Collection. This is not a new gun to the line, but what makes this one different from the rest is that this is actually a new model. It's a lot shorter and thicker, and I actually kind of prefer that over the older model. The older model was thinner and longer, and it was able to bend easily, and with this new design choice, it's not really gonna bend at all. I don't think I actually got it to bend, so it's just one piece of plastic that's sturdy and it will not bend on you. So I really like that, and the detail is also just immaculate. I think it's really good. There's engravings on the handle, there's on this, you can see the slide, the ejection port, the barrel, little details on the laser on the bottom. It just overall looks really good, and I'm impressed with the sculpt job that Jazwares did put into this. And I just, like I said, I prefer this design over the original one that Jazwares was going with. So very cool, Jazwares, for making this new design choice. And what do you guys think? Do you like this new design choice? Do you prefer the original? Because there might be some of you who do. I don't know. So I would like to hear your input down below. For the final weapon included, we have Kelly's Oath-Sworn shotgun. Now this is a really good recreation of the shotgun. I think they did really good with the paint job. I like the sculpting. Now we haven't seen this gun in Halo Infinite yet, but then why is Kelly wearing Halo Infinite armor? But anyways, I think that Jazwares did a really good job with the sculpting, the paint job, the color separation. I really like how this was executed, and I think that this is a really cool just adaptation, or recreation I should say, of the shotgun from Halo 5 and 4. So yeah, very cool. And hopefully we can get another release with this shotgun, obviously in more gray and black and gunmetal colors rather than Kelly's Oath-Sworn paint job, because I actually like the design of the shotgun. I'm not saying it's the best one in Halo, but I actually don't mind its design. And that is pretty much what is included with this figure, and we were at the point of the video where I would just give my final thoughts, pros, cons, all that kind of stuff. But this is not the end of the video, but I will still give you my thoughts, starting off with, I'm very sad about the articulation on this figure. I really wish that this figure had better articulation. I really have the standard that as each wave progresses, the articulation or the performance of the figure would be better, but for some reason that is not the case here. But I think the figure looks fine. I really like, the sculpting. The paint job I do have an issue with, but I'll address that in a second. But I really do like how this figure looks visually, and it's a shame that the articulation on this figure is not spectacular. It's subpar at best. It's an unfortunate thing. And then going back to the paint job, and what can I possibly have an issue with this figure if it's just one color? Something doesn't, the sculpting and the paint job just don't really play well together. Like, I feel like I need to take a Gundam marker to this figure just to have all the sculpting really pop out, because it's all one color. It just feels off. I mean, there's the black undersuit and some gray parts, yeah, but I'm talking about the armor specifically. It just feels like the amount of sculpting and details that I'm able to feel and see in person don't really show up on camera as well, and I really want these details and sculpting and all that hard work Jazwares did put into the figure to pop out, and I feel like the only way to do that is by blackwashing the figure. So that's exactly what I did, and I went to the extent of not just making those finer details pop that you can't really see in the camera, but I also kind of wanted to make her armor look used and a little worn. So I did that on top of just trying to make all the little details and lines and just little shapes all over the armor pop out, and I think it looks good. I don't think it looks too bad. I tried to make it look like she still had white armor instead of gray armor, so I'm happy personally with how this looks, and it allows for all the finer, smaller details to pop out, and now you can actually see it on camera just to see how much really went into the sculpting of this figure. So yeah. And really after that, those are the only two issues I have with this figure, just the articulation being god-awful, and the paint job not really allowing those finer details and the really good sculpt job to pop out. But yeah, that's really it. After that, I think the figure's fine. So let's go into some things I actually do like about this figure. Starting off is the design. Despite the paint job not really allowing those finer details and the amazing sculpt job really pop, I actually like how this figure looks. I don't know, it uses the same body as Master Chief too. I don't know why I like this design so much. I don't know if it's because it's in a different color or what, but I just really like how the design of this figure looks. I'm also a sucker for the EVA helmet, or whatever helmet that Kelly is rocking. I really like the big round dome helmets that are in Halo. It just gives me this retro, just sci-fi vibe, and I really like it. And it's funny because the EVA isn't even my favorite helmet in Halo. It's the ODST helmet. It's just something about the EVA that just wins me over easily as much as the ODST helmet does. And yeah, the design, if you can get past that the paint job kind of hides some of the smaller details on this figure, I really do like the design of the figure. And the last thing that I really do like about this figure is the engravings on her visor. There's just something about it that's just visually pleasing to me. I just can't get over the fact how much I like these engravings on the visor. And yeah, so I like the design of this figure a lot. The paint job and the articulation is what's killing me. And by paint job, I don't mean the color itself, I just mean the lack of detail and sculpting that pops out because of it. If they took a Gundam marker to this figure and just allowed those finer details to pop out while keeping the armor still white, I feel like this would have been a really good figure overall, besides the articulation. But just when you're able to see the little details and enjoy the really good sculpt job on this figure alongside with the engravings on the helmet, this is a really solid figure design wise. And yeah, and that is pretty much all I have to say about Spartan Kelly, so we can move on to the next figure that we'll be covering, which is Jorge. So taking a look at Jorge in the box, first impressions, visuals, everything is looking good so far. Back of the box, he comes with his backpack, chain gun, and hands, so he's not getting a magnum, and everyone else in the wave looking good. So very happy to have another member of Noble Team in my collection. Very curious, well, I was very curious to see how they were going to pack the chain gun and the backpack. So happy they didn't raise the price and make this guy a deluxe figure because he comes with more. So let's take a deep dive into this guy. So starting off with articulation, obviously in the head region he can look side to side just fine. His helmet does tend to clash with the chest piece because he's a chonky boy, and he can look up and down, so his head range of motion is about the same as Kelly's. Getting to the arm articulation, you can rotate his arm 360 degrees, and you can bring his arm up and down if you really wanted to. And elbow articulation is actually worse. He can't really bring that forearm up all too well, but I'm guessing that's because of how thick his armor is, so I don't know if that docks points or not. And then hand articulation is about the same for every other Spartan Collection figure. Rotate 360 degrees and bend the wrist pretty much however you want. And his torso articulation is better than fucking Kelly's. The chonk boy over here, big thick boy who should have arguably limited articulation for a reason, has better articulation, but he can go back and forth inside the side. And then when we get to the legs, he can do almost a full split, but you know, it's still good signs of leg articulation. You can rotate his leg 360 degrees, but be careful at the top, at the thigh, because you can get the leg stuck and break it off if you are not careful. So yeah, don't break your fucking figure. And then when we get to the knee articulation, he can do almost a butt kick. He can reach his butt, but I wouldn't, force it, because you will break his knee if you do so. And he has the weird knee, non-organic looking thing as well. And then when we get to feet articulation, it's the same as every other Spartan Collection figure. It's just there, he can swivel it pretty much however you want for poses, and his toes just go up and down. So overall, I'm actually happy with this guy's articulation, and I think it's funny that it is overall kind of better than Kelly's. It's just kind of ironic seeing that he's a big chunky boy. And the backpack It's not too complicated to pop on. There's just 2 pegs, 2 peg holes. You do the math, and the backpack stays on actually really well, so you can manhandle this figure and not worry about the backpack coming off. And getting into accessories, starting off with the hands, our boy comes with 7 hands like every other figure does, and the lineup for George is actually a little bit different. He comes with 2 holding hands, 2 gun holding hands, 2 tactical call out hands, and 1 fist. And note, the hands are hands. I would find it bizarre if Jazwares one day just messed up the hands. And obviously they have the back armor plate to, you know, match the Spartan the hands go to. So yeah, and getting into the only gun that comes with George, and that is his iconic chain gun. Now I'm very happy with how this came out. I think it looks really good. The amount of sculpting detail and just the color separation, or the amount of colors on it, are just really cool. We have some dark green, black, dark gray, light gray, yellow, just a bunch of colors to really make the details pop out on the chain gun. And the sculpting, just all the little lines, the holes on the heat shield, just everything on this gun looks really good, and I'm very happy with how it came out. And I have to applaud Jazwares for making sure that they got George's iconic chain gun down well, because they did. And before we take that deep dive into my brain about what I think about George, let's just do some size comparisons, because this guy is fucking massive. And by size comparisons, I mean let's compare him to Kelly and Combat Evolved Chief, because he's part of Wave 5, right? And here is George next to Kelly, and only by just a little bit is he taller than her, but by a huge margin is he way chonkier than she is. And then here is Combat Evolved Chief next to George, and they're almost the same height. It seems like George is just a sliver taller, and yet again he is by a huge margin way fucking chonkier than Chief. And here we are at the portion of the video where I practically just give my 2 cents on the figure, what I liked, disliked, and stuff like that. So let's get right into it. And starting off with the things that I kind of don't like about this figure, and there's not really much to begin with, but the first thing that comes to mind is when he has his chain gun, sometimes he can fall over. It's not guaranteed, but it's just sometimes his balance isn't always there. And as you can see throughout the turntable shots, I do have him on some NECA stands, which work perfectly for these figures. And besides that, I think more times than not his balancing is pretty fine. And then when we get to the articulation, some people might not like how limited it is. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed, because this guy's chonky, and usually when the articulation is being limited, it's due to the armor clashing with itself. And because this guy is built extra big, do I not dock points? Do I make an exception because George isn't he isn't the most agile Spartan? So like, do I dock points for the limited articulation or not? That's up to you guys. I'm just going to be neutral about it and be like, hey, he's big and chonky. His articulation isn't going to be superb in some areas of his body. But really, that's the only things I have to say about me disliking the figure. So let's move on to the thousands and hundreds of things I have to say that I love about this figure. Starting off with the paint job and sculpting, because those two go hand in hand. I think they did a really good job with the paint job. All the colors look right. Nothing looks too bright or too dark. And I like how they did some weathering on his armor, and I feel like that weathering allowed for the smaller details and just the more minute things that Jazwares sculpted on to pop out more, which, if you don't remember already, in the Kelly figure, that was a big issue. There was no wear and tear on her armor, so it was just all just white, so smaller, finer details were not able to pop out as much. Where on this figure, complete opposite, those finer, smaller details pop out, and I really like how they look. I think Jazwares did a really good job when it comes to painting and sculpting on George. I love the reflective visor. If you don't know already, I am team reflective visor for the Spartan Collection figures, because some of the figures don't have reflective visors, and that makes me big sad when I see that. But it's good to see that George is getting a reflective visor. And yeah, overall I'm very happy with just the visual presentation on this guy. So overall, if you couldn't tell, I'm very happy with how this figure was executed. And for me, at least, it feels like that this segment was shorter than the Kelly one. There wasn't really that much to talk about. I knew what I liked and disliked, and I felt like everything was straightforward. Whereas Kelly, there was just a lot of other things going on. So as much as I dislike this segment being shorter, I really do love this figure, and I think that Jazwares executed this guy really well. Here we have it, the figure I'm actually most excited about because I love Halo 3 and I'm a Halo 3 horde till the day I die, and that is the Spartan Rogue. This guy is looking real slick. I love that he comes with a brute shot, something we haven't seen yet, and I am absolutely drooling over this figure because I love Halo 3. And so with that all said, first impressions, visuals, everything is looking smexy. So let's take a look into this guy. Getting into the articulation of this figure, he can look up and down, side to side, pretty good. And the one thing he can do that the other two figures cannot is tilt his head pretty much however you want. So out of the three figures, I'd say this guy has the best head articulation. And then moving down to the arms, you can rotate your arms 360 degrees and bring them up a good amount. So that's always good range of motion in the shoulders. Getting to the forearms, he can bring his forearm up a good amount so he can hold things and just have really good posability. Getting down to the wrists, he can rotate his wrist 360 degrees and basically bend it however you want. Standard articulation for the Spartan Collection figures. Getting to the torso, this guy actually has good torso articulation out of the three as well. You can go back and forth, side to side. You can kind of tilt them in other directions, but then if you go a little too much, his torso will pop off. And then getting to the legs, he can do a split just like Kelly, which is a good sign of leg articulation. And he also does the weird thing, if you try rotating his thigh 360 degrees, it will kind of go out of place. Getting to the knees, he does the gross knee thing where he can do a butt kick, but it just looks really gross and just not organic. So it's just an icky looking pose when you bend his knee. It's just, I don't know why Jazwares does this. It's just icky. And then getting to the feet, he can rotate his feet 360 degrees and bend them pretty much however you want, so he can have good balance however you pose him, which is always good to see. And then the toes, obviously they just go up and down like every other toe on the Spartan Collection figures. So far some of the best articulation out of Wave 5 so far. Jumping right into accessories, starting off with the weapon that everyone was excited to see to come with this figure, and that is the brute shot. This is a really good recreation. I like the weathering, the paint job, the sculpting, it all looks good. The colors look accurate. I have no complaints. I think this is a really good recreation of the brute shot. Now my only issue with this weapon is that you can't hold it properly. Like what the little circle center part of the brute shot where those two nubs are pointing out, the figure cannot hold on to, and in the game that's where the trigger is, or where you would hold, you know, the firing mechanism for the brute shot. So what you would have to do is have your guy hold the handle of the brute shot here, and then if you want him to look like he's shooting the brute shot, he has to hold the top of the brute shot. You'll see some poses of it later on, but it is unfortunate that he cannot accurately hold the brute shot just like in the games. So that's the only downside to the brute shot, but after that, sculpting and paint job, just it looks really good, and I'm happy to see Jazwares show some love to the Halo 3 side of things. And for our second weapon included, we do have the energy sword. Now this is based off the Halo Infinite energy sword. They did not take the time to model the Halo 3 energy sword, which is unfortunate because that was a very cool looking model of the energy sword. But I do not hate how the Halo Infinite energy sword looks, so I guess I'll take it. I think the sculpting on the handle looks fine. It's got the double-sided print for the energy with the purple and the white. I just kind of wish that we got a Halo 3 energy sword, but after that, I think it looks fine, nothing too crazy. And yeah, and obviously this is a Spartan Collection figure, so it does come with additional hands. We have 2 holding hands, 2 fists, 2 trigger finger gun holding hands, and 1 energy sword hand with the appropriate armor plating on the hand for the Spartan. And, you know, Jazwares just does a good job, you know, nothing too crazy, nothing bad, just a good job with the hands. And something I noticed while recording the video and just looking at the Rogue figure, his armor from the knees down is actually taken from the Halo 2 Master Chief. There's some slight changes made to make it more accurate to the Halo 3 armor, but I just realized that they just reused some parts of the Halo 2 Master Chief. Just no complaints, just something I realized. I don't know if this has happened to anyone else, but I got an extra thigh peg piece. Like, it's not really weathered or anything, it's just the bare blue. So it's, you know, I'm assuming I got this by accident, but I just thought it was funny that this was included with my figure, that I got something from the factory that I probably shouldn't have gotten. Here we are, we're at the turntable segment of the video. I basically go over what I like, dislike, you know, just my thoughts on the figure. Starting off with the things, that I have gripes with, and trust me, it doesn't even have to do with the figure, it's more about the weapons. Starting off with the brute shot, and that one little nitpicky gripe that I have is that your figure cannot accurately hold the brute shot. You have to do it where his hand is just in a slightly different position. That's just me being a stickler though. If I'm not thinking that this ruins the toy or anything like that, I think that this figure is still really good despite that one little thing. It's just me being a stickler, like I said. And then getting into the second issue I have, and that's with the energy sword. And like I said, not really an issue, just me being a stickler, and just really wishing that we had a Halo 3 energy sword rather than just another Halo Infinite energy sword. Don't get me wrong, I really like the design of the Halo Infinite energy sword. I just, like I said, Halo 3 is my favorite Halo game. I like a lot of the designs from the game, and the energy sword, probably one of my favorite versions of the energy sword, is in Halo 3. So I just kind of wish that they gave us a Halo 3 energy sword. But after that, those are the only really two like issues, put that in air quotes, whatever you want to call it. It's just, you know, me being a little stickler, just wishing that those two things were, you know, either changed or improved upon. And then after that, I don't really have an issue with the figure itself. I feel like his articulation is the best out of all of Wave 5, because Kelly's is just downright atrocious, and just I feel like that figure should be remade. And then the Jorge articulation is limited because he's a big chunky boy, so I don't know if that's really I should dock points for that. I don't know if you would dock points for that, but personally, because he's a big chunky boy, you don't really think he's the most agile Spartan out there. So of course his articulation is going to be limited. And then we have Rouge, the perfect balance of articulation throughout this entire wave. He doesn't, his articulation isn't like 1,000 Toys articulation where it's beyond great and excels, but it also doesn't really fall behind in anything. I think it's just good standard Spartan Collection articulation, and that's just how I feel about it. You probably would, some of you might think, oh, you wish there's more torso articulation, which I completely get, or, you know, they really fix the knees. That is actually an issue I do have with this figure, but that's seen it throughout all the figures, so I'm not just going to target the Rouge for this, but all of their knees, they need to improve upon the knee articulation, because somehow to where they can do butt kicks but not have it look like they're breaking their legs in the process. But that's for the entire wave and not just the Rouge. But what I really do like about this figure is the paint job and the sculpting. I really like the blue and the red contrasting each other, and normally I like red more than blue, but I feel like this was a good choice for the figure. I feel like if they did the blue being the secondary color and the red being the main color, it would look kind of gross. So I'm actually liking this a lot better, where red is kind of like used in to spice up the look, and then have blue be the base rather than, you know, vice versa, like I said. So yeah, I think that the paint job on this guy is phenomenal. I like how it looks worn. It's got some grit to it, and I feel like that grit and that wear and tear really brings out the sculpting in this figure. That's like with Jorge, and that's why I blackwashed Kelly, so there can be some grit to it to help bring out those finer details throughout the figure, because Jazwares does a really good job at sculpting their figures. It's just sometimes the paint job doesn't complement the sculpt, as seen in Kelly. But yeah, I feel like on this guy, the grit and the wear and tear really helps bring out the sculpt and just all the little details, and I love how this guy looks. He just looks really good. I don't know if this is because I have a Halo 3 bias, because I really love Halo 3's aesthetic. And then of course the visor, it's reflective. It's always a plus for me. I really like when Jazwares does that for the Spartans. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on the Rouge. Now going into what I think about the wave overall, starting off with the one that I kind of already addressed, and that is the terrible looking knee articulation. Granted, they can do a butt kick, which is always a good sign of good knee articulation, but just the visual execution is absolutely disgusting, and it makes me want to cry inside. But that's pretty much my only complaint about the wave, besides Kelly's, you know, articulation being atrocious. She can't turn her torso and all that, but that I've already ripped her a new one, and that's just about that figure. The wave overall, I think that, you know, we have a awesome introduction to a bunch of new molds and weapons. That's one thing that this wave does really well, is introduce a bunch of new things. We have the brute shot, Jorge's chain gun, we have Kelly's shotgun, and then of course we have some of the armor molds, like we have the Rouge now, so we can get more Rouge Spartans, just like how we used to get a bunch of re-releases for the Mark 5B. We have, like I said, the shotgun. Hopefully we can get another version of it where it's in, you know, its original colors, because I actually like that model of shotgun. We can probably get a chain gun where it comes with the legs and a shield, but that might be with a deluxe figure or something, I don't know. And then of course we have George's Grenadier armor and all that. So we could get some re-releases with some of the stuff that we've seen in Wave 5 and just expand the portfolio of, Jazewares Spartan Collection. And I think that's one of the strengths of this wave, of just how much new stuff it introduces, because I know for a while that the waves were just re-releasing stuff and not introducing too much new stuff, and I'm really happy that they turned that around in this wave. Now, getting into who I think has the best of what, I think that the Rogue has the best paint job, I think that George has the best sculpt work, and I think Kelly has the best need to fix. If that makes any sense, I don't know, that's me trying to be funny. But anyways, I think that every character is a great introduction into the Spartan Collection. I think these were all great choices, despite some of their executions not being exactly the best. But besides that, I really think that this is a solid wave with a solid selection of accessories and characters. And that's pretty much all I have to say about these figures and the wave overall. I'm very happy with the amount of new stuff that we're seeing in this wave, and I am happy with the selection of figures that we've gotten. Kind of wish the execution was a little bit better, but overall very happy nonetheless. And if you do like this video and you want to see more content like that, more than welcome to go on my channel. I've done some other Spartan Collection videos. I do Star Wars stuff, I do NECA stuff, only aliens at the moment, and I also do some model kit stuff here and there. But if you like that kind of stuff, you like reviews for toys and just seeing what I like, you can check out the channel. And if you like this video, a like and a subscription is all I ask. Commenting is a lot of effort, and we both know the bell is broken. So with all that said, hope you enjoyed the video. Go check some other stuff out, and I'll see you in another one.